Hi everybody, Evan here. Alright, this is going to be a quick review of the code we went over in class last week in which we created a to-do app, a simple to-do app using the VueJS CDN. So I'm going to take us through step by step. The first step is to link VueJS to our HTML in a script tag using the Vue CDN. Place it at the bottom of your body like any other script. So I'm going to go ahead and place that Vue CDN below my other scripts, all of which are Bootstrap related, but above my script for main.js, above my custom script. Always want that to be last, and this is no exception. Okay, now that I have that attached, we're ready to start using Vue. Number 3, we're going to need to create the HTML element in which the code inside our Vue instance will run. In your HTML, create a div and give it an ID of to-do. So inside my body, in my HTML, I'm going to create a div with an ID of to-do. And once we create our Vue instance, we're going to define the element with the ID of to-do as the element in which we want our Vue code to run. Number 4, inside of our to-do div, let's create a section to contain our to-do input. When I say input, I mean input tag or input element. Create a section, create one text input, give this input, the placeholder text, what you need to do. Okay, I'm also going to put a title in here. I'm just going to put an H1 that says to-do app. Okay, we don't have a button, nothing like that, just an H1 and an input inside of a section inside of our to-do element. All right, number 5. Now we'll need to create the unordered list, which will contain all of our to-dos once we have entered them. Below the section, create a UL. And inside this UL, create one and only one list item. Think of this list item as the template list item for all of our future to-dos. Okay, so that's good to go. Number 6, inside of each to-do LI, we want to have a label element which contains the to-do and a button element for deleting the to-do. Add an empty label and a button with the text content of X inside the empty list item. So I'm going to come inside my list item and I'm going to create a label element. I'm going to keep it empty because I don't know what the to-do is yet, right? And I'm going to create a button, type equals button. And the only text content is going to be a capital X. Now that our HTML is set up, let's set up our Vue instance. In JavaScript, store a new Vue instance in a variable called to-do with the following code. So it's going to look like this. Our to-do equals new Vue with a capital V, parentheses, curly brace. Now, specify the element in which we want our Vue instance code to run with an L property and create a data property and a methods property, each containing an object below it. So one at a time, inside our Vue instance, these curly braces indicate that we're dealing with an object, right? This is basically a giant object. So first property is going to be LEL, and this is going to specify the element in our HTML where we want our Vue code and our Vue logic to run. And we want it to run inside this master to-do div, this div with the ID of to-do. So as a value for element, in quotation marks, I'm going to write a basic CSS selector for the element with the ID of to-do. If you want, I could do this way. If you wanted to use a class name in here, you could. This element property will accept any kind of CSS selector with which we're all familiar. And below that property, create a data property and a methods property, each containing an object. So that's going to be a data property, which contains an object, and then a methods property, which also contains an object. Number 9. Now we need to create a few data properties, which will update with user interaction. So by data properties here, I mean properties of this data object. Properties of this data object, which is one property of our Vue instance. So we need to create a few data properties which will update with user interaction. New task, which will update as a user creates a new to-do, and to-do list, which will be an empty array in which we'll store to-dos as they are created. So first property, new task. This will update as a user creates a new to-do. This is going to be a string, so I'm just going to put some empty quotation marks here. And below new task, to-do list. And this is going to be an empty array, so empty square brackets. Okay, number 10. In HTML, excuse me, in HTML, inside your text input, inside your section, so over here, let's bind the value of this input to the new task data key. Think of these data keys as plain JavaScript variables. To do this, inside the input tag, add vModel equals new task. Let's go ahead and add that. vModel equals new task. vModel is a Vue-specific directive which binds the value of this input to a data key. So the value of this input element is going to be equivalent to the value of this new task data key. As a user types into this input, the value of this new task property here is going to update. This means that as user types into this input tag, the new task key will update reactively in real time. If you want to see this in action at this point, add a paragraph somewhere in your HTML inside the to-do div, but outside your section and li. So I'm just going to create a paragraph right here between the section and the unordered list, and give it the text content of new task in double curly braces. Remember, double curly braces is two-way data binding or interpolation. Now load your page, type into the text input, and watch the content of that paragraph element change as you type. So let's give that a try. Open it in the browser. Looks like I've got an error. See what it is. Oh, I haven't saved my JavaScript. That's why. Okay, reload. All right, now when I type into this to do, we should see an empty paragraph element populate with some text. Okay, so that is two-way data binding. That's how vModel works. The value of this input is tied to the value of this property, and this property is being printed by this paragraph by way of two-way data binding. So it's a bit of a triangle here. Okay, it's important that the logic is understood. We don't need this paragraph. That's not why we're binding the value of this input to this property, but the relationship that's going on here is important to understand. And as I change this, whatever I write in here, it will be immediately reflected in that paragraph element. Okay, so I've commented out the paragraph, reload my page. We shouldn't have any more of that. Let's keep moving. Number 11. In HTML, then we'll need to write the trigger for the function which will actually create a to-do item and store it in our to-do list key. To do this, we'll reference a function called addTask, which we'll create in the next step, and cause it to fire when a user presses the Enter key inside our text input. To do this, we'll use another Vue directive, vOn, which works just like an onClick or onScroll or onMouseOver attribute / event listener. So inside our text input, let's also write vOn : key up dot enter equals add task. Okay, we haven't created add task yet, but that's going to be the name of a method. This key up is the event that we're going to be listening for inside this input element. On key up, and we have specified dot enter, that we're not listening for just any key up, we're listening for a key up event on the enter key. Okay, we can change this. Could be enter, could be space, could be any number, any key on our keyboard. We can specify, or we could remove it entirely, vOn key up, and anytime we lift a key, it will fire this function. Okay, but right now we want it to only fire when we have a key up event on the enter key. Okay, and now let's go ahead and define this addTask function. Now to define the addTask function, we'll add it as a method property like this. So inside of our methods object in our Vue instance, I'm going to create a property that's called addTask. And this is going to contain a function. Inside our new function, we'll define a variable task, var task, equal to this dot new task. Inside the Vue instance, this variable, this, will almost always refer to our data object. So this dot new task refers to our new task data key. Think about it. When this function is running, a user should have typed a new to-do into our text input and hit the enter key. So the value of that new task key is the new to-do which the user typed in. And now we have stored that data in the task variable inside our addTask function. Okay, so if this is the data object, then this dot new task is the new task property inside of data. When this function runs, presumably a user will have typed a to-do into this text input, like buy milk, and hit the enter key. And remember, as they type into this input, the value of this new task property is updated. So by this point, I've written buy milk and hit enter. New task now equals buy milk. Because I hit enter, the addTask function fires. So the task variable inside this function now equals data.newTask, or buy milk. So task contains the string which I wrote in that input. That's how this works. That's the relationship. After declaring our task variable, we're going to push task to the to-do list array. Don't forget, in order to target the to-do list key inside the addTask function, we need to use this dot to-do list. And now our function should be good to go. So this dot to-do list, which is going to select the to-do list property inside the data object. So this dot to-do list is this empty array that we're looking at right here. Dot push task. Number 15. Now that our function is ready, we need to set up our list so that it updates with new to-dos as we add them. Inside the opening list item tag, come over here, insert the following code. v4 equals task in to-do list. This is a Vue directive which uses for loop logic. What this will do is it will replicate this whole list item. It will replicate this list item element for every item inside our to-do list data key. We have also named each item in this array as a task in the same line of code. In other words, for each so-called task in the to-do list array, there will be a list item like this one. Okay, so in writing the v4 directive, we're telling the browser that for every item, which we have here called task, for every task contained in the to-do list array, and that's referring directly to this empty array in our data property, for every task in to-do list, we're going to create a list item identical to this. It's going to be a list item that contains a label and a button. Okay, so if we had 4 to-dos, we would have 4 list items, each containing one label and one button. That's how v4 works. Now we need to put some actual content in here and make sure that content is dynamic, but we've got the logic set up now. Number 16, our list item is now connected to our to-do list data key. Inside the empty label element inside the list item, insert in curly braces new task, just task. Okay, and this task is referring to this task, which is the name, the reference, the nomenclature we have chosen to refer to an item in to-do list. So task in this case is kind of like writing to-do list square brackets I. Okay? The v4 is going to loop through to-do list, and every given item in that array is currently referred to as a task. So by including this task in curly braces inside the label, what's going to happen is it's going to print the string which that particular item contains inside this label element. So if my first to-do is buy milk, then the first label inside the first list item is going to say buy milk. If the second one is buy eggs, then the second list item, its label is going to say buy eggs. Okay, we'll take a look at this in a second. To see it in action, refresh your page and try adding a few to-dos. So I save, refresh my page. Note that the template list item that we saw before, it's gone. Doesn't exist anymore. Why? Because currently to-do list is empty. It starts out completely empty. So if we have no items in to-do list, if we have no tasks in to-do list, then we have no list items. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and create a couple. Buy milk. I hit enter. Buy eggs. I hit enter. Buy apples. Hit enter. Okay? Every time I do that, it adds this string to the to-do list array. And as more things are added to the to-do list array, more list items are created automatically, which include a label that contains the task itself, the string itself. That's how this works. Okay, so we're getting there. Almost done. Now we want to enable the button inside our list item to delete a to-do. We're going to add a v-on directive to this button here, which listens for a click of it and runs a function remove task, which will receive an argument of task. Specifically, this will be the task unique to the list item containing the given button. So v-on click equals remove task, and I'm going to feed this function an argument equal to task. Okay, this task is the same as this task is the same as this task. So again, it's like writing to-do list square brackets I. Okay, so the argument that's going to be fed into this function is going to be the item in the to-do list where we currently are for this given list item. So back to the example I already have up, this button is going to receive buy milk as an argument. This button is going to receive buy eggs as an argument. This button is going to receive buy apples as an argument. Okay? Number 18. In JavaScript, then we define the remove task method in our Vue instance. So below add task, I'm going to create a remove task property, which also contains a function. And inside this function, we'll declare an index variable, so var index, equal to the index of our argument, task, in our data's to-do list key. So we know that this function received a task argument, and we need to find what's the index of this task in to-do list. Okay, so this is going to require an array method, which you may or may not be familiar with, but the way it looks is this. To-do list, well, pardon me, this dot to-do list, okay, so data object, to-do list property, and the method is dot index of, and in parentheses, task. What this is going to return is the index of this inside this array. So the index of the task inside the to-do list array. So again, with my example, if our to-do list array at this point in time has buy milk, buy eggs, buy apples, and I click on this third X, then task, which is fed into remove task, buy apples. And inside this function, index is equal to the index of buy apples in to-do list. And the index of buy apples in to-do list is 0, 1, 2. 2. Okay, now that we have that index, we can easily remove that item from the array by using the splice method, another array method, which I hope you're familiar with. So now we're going to splice this dot to-do list dot splice, and it's going to take two arguments, index, which in the example would be 2, and 1. That's going to tell it how many items to remove. We want to remove one item starting from this index. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If you're not familiar with index of or splice, I'd encourage you to look them up, do some research. Make sure that you understand what's happening here, but the way this is going to work, go ahead and save and refresh and demonstrate. Use the same to-dos, buy milk, buy eggs, buy apples. Okay, so at this point in time, actually I have a better idea. Beneath my unordered list, I'm going to actually display in a paragraph to-do list. I'm going to use that mustache syntax, that two-way data binding or interpolation, to display the value of to-do list at a given time. Okay, so there's an empty array. It's currently empty. But if I add buy milk, contains buy milk. If I add buy eggs, contains buy milk and buy eggs. If I add buy apples, contains buy milk, buy eggs, buy apples. 3 strings in the array of to-do list. Now if I click on the X next to buy eggs, it's going to invoke the remove task function, which takes buy eggs as an argument. And that function is going to find the index of by eggs in to-do list, which we can see is obviously 1. And then it's going to splice one item from to-do list, starting from the index of 1, and it's only going to remove one item. So it's going to remove by eggs. So I'm going to demonstrate. I click on the X, and now the array only contains by milk, by apples, and we only have 2 list items, by milk, by apples. Okay, so that is the relationship between to-do list and these two functions, add task and remove task, or to-do list, the array, and this unordered list of list items using the v4 directive. Okay, and with that, our VueJS to-do list is finished. Okay, we've done it. We've created an effective to-do list where we can add as many things as we want, and we can delete them at will. So it completely functions, and it's extremely reactive. And we've used Vue, we've used best practices. It's very, very light on our JavaScript call stack. All is well. But now you might want to think about how you can improve it on your own. For example, try adding a clear all button, which clears the list of all to-dos. Try adding a checkbox to each to-do, which, when checked, causes the to-do become crossed out. Maybe you don't want to remove a to-do entirely when you finish it. Maybe you just want to cross it out and indicate on your list that you've completed it. Try making a to-do which has already been, typo. Try making a to-do which is actually editable when you click on it. So if I added buy oranges, maybe I misspelled it, or I just wanted to change the item. Maybe I want to edit it by double-clicking on it and retyping something. So these are all little things that you can do, other than styling, obviously, to make this to-do app more compelling. You could also add a description for each to-do. So maybe I can add a little description, some notes here. Or you could add a timestamp. Maybe you can have the user indicate by what time they want to complete this to-do, or what day of the week. Plenty of ways that you can improve this project. One very, very simple one is inside of the add task function. Let's make sure that this input resets and empties whenever we add a new task. To do that, inside add task, which runs, remember, when a user hits enter inside our input, let's add another line that says this dot new task equals empty string. Because remember, the value of the the value of this input is bound to the value of the new task property. So if we set new task equal to an empty string, the value of the input is going to become an empty string, which will in effect reset the input. So by milk, I hit enter and it resets. By eggs, I hit enter, resets. I don't have to delete eggs and change the produce item I want to buy. It completely resets and gives me a fresh start. So that's one very simple way. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. Moving on from here, we're going to get some more practice with the Vue directives we've already dealt with. We're going to look at more complex ways to apply v4, including using the index in the v4 logic, because we we did a little bit of a workaround and hard-coded it here, but there is a way to dynamically access the index of a task in to-do list if we wanted to, inside of our HTML. So we're going to take a look at that. We're also going to take a look at routes, which in Vue or in MVC frameworks are used for building single-page applications, which is going to be the most common use for a framework like this. So routes are going to allow you to really break a web page up into reusable, scalable, and manageable components. It's going to make your websites much cleaner, smoother, more reactive, and feel much more like a native application or a mobile application rather than a website. You'll see an appreciable difference between websites you build using Vue and Vue Router versus websites you build with plain old vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so exciting things to come.